1. E4, Keres, an attacking legend and one of the strongest players never to become world champion, begins the game with the most direct and popular move. Playing 1. E4, Keres invites an open, tactical battle, a terrain where he felt immensely comfortable and had achieved countless brilliant victories throughout his career. 1. C5, Fischer immediately responds with his favorite weapon, the Sicilian defense. This choice is a declaration of intent. Fischer is not seeking quiet equality but is creating a structural imbalance from the very start to fight for a win. The Sicilian guarantees an asymmetrical and bloody battle, exactly the kind of chess the young American prodigy craved. 2. Nf3, the most logical and common development. The knight is placed on its best square, from where it controls the center, prepares the d4 advance, and puts pressure on the e5 pawn in future lines. It is a move that keeps all options open for white, preparing to enter the main and sharpest lines of the Sicilian. 2. D6, Fischer opts for one of the most solid and classical setups within the Sicilian. This move controls the e5 square, prepares queenside development, and leads to some of the most complex and theoretically rich variations, such as the Najorf or the dragon, showing he is not afraid to enter a theoretical debate with the great Keres. 3. D4, Keres immediately strikes in the center, seeking to open the position for his pieces. This is the most ambitious way to challenge the Sicilian. By opening the d-file, white hopes to exploit their lead in development and space, creating direct threats before black can consolidate their position and organize their counterplay. 3. Cxd4, the thematic and practically obligatory response. Black eliminates the white central pawn, accepting a long-term structural advantage, a central pawn majority, in exchange for temporarily ceding the initiative and central control to white. This exchange defines the strategy for both sides for the rest of the game. For Nxd4, the white knight moves to its ideal post in the center of the board. From d4, the knight exerts enormous influence, controlling key squares on both flanks and acting as the central pivot for white's operations. It is a piece that black will often seek to exchange to relieve the pressure. 4. Nf6, the most active development for black. The knight comes into play with a direct threat on the e4 pawn, forcing white to respond and thus lose a tempo in their attacking plan. This move is fundamental in almost all main variations of the Sicilian and is the beginning of black's counterplay. 5. Nc3, the logical and best response. White develops a piece while defending the threatened e4 pawn. This move solidifies control of the d5 square and prepares to meet black's plans, setting the stage for the highly complex middle game that is about to unfold. The pieces are developing naturally for a major clash. 5. 6. The Najorf variation. This is Fischer's signature move and his most trusted system. The seemingly modest pawn move is incredibly flexible and profound. It takes control of the b5 square, preventing any white knight jumps, and prepares a queenside pawn expansion with b5, launching a powerful counterattack aimed at the white king. 6. Bg5, Keres chooses one of the most aggressive and theoretically sharpest responses to the Najorf. He develops his bishop and places a pin on the f6 knight. This move aims to disrupt black's coordination, create weaknesses around the king, and prepare a direct assault on the kingside, leading to incredibly sharp and double-edged positions. 6. E6, Fischer's standard and best reply. This move breaks the pin on the knight, solidifies the center by controlling the d5 square, and prepares the development of the kingside bishop to e7. It's a crucial move that sets up black's defensive structure before embarking on the characteristic queenside counterattack. 7. Ef4, white intensifies the pressure. This aggressive pawn move stakes a greater claim in the center, prepares to storm the kingside with g4 g5, and puts further pressure on black's central e6 pawn. Keres is making it clear that he intends to launch a full-scale attack against the black king. 7. B7, the most solid and reliable response. The bishop develops to its most natural square, where it prepares for castling, reinforces the defense of the kingside, and keeps an eye on the critical d6 pawn. This is the main line, and Fischer is not shying away from the most challenging theoretical battle. 8. Qf3, a key move in the English attack setup. The queen develops to an aggressive square, from where she supports the kingside pawn storm, adds another attacker to the e6 pawn, and most importantly, prepares for castling on the queenside. This sets the stage for the classic Najdorf race. 8. QC7, a multi-purpose queen move. It develops a piece, takes control of the semi-open c-file, adds another defender to the crucial e6 square, and prepares to meet white's queenside castling. The queen on c7 is a vital piece in black's setup, coordinating both defensive and offensive operations. 9. The gauntlet is thrown down. Keres castles on the queenside, moving his king far away from the center and unleashing his kingside pawns to storm black's position. This decision ensures a sharp, bloody fight where both sides will race to checkmate the other's king. There is no turning back now. 9. NBD7, a flexible and useful developing move. The knight on d7 supports the center, prepares to challenge white's control of the e5 square, and can be rerouted to b6 or c5 to aid in the queenside counterattack. It is a vital cog in the Najdorf machine, connecting the queenside and kingside operations. 10. B2, Keres opts for a slightly quieter setup for the bishop compared to the more common BD3. From E2, the bishop has a solid defensive role, supports the center, and can be rerouted to F3 if needed. It's a more subtle approach, but it still fits perfectly into white's aggressive plans. 10. B5, the counterattack begins. Fischer wastes no time in launching his own pawn storm on the queenside. This move attacks the white e4 pawn, indirectly, by threatening BB7, and prepares to roll the b pawn down the board to rip open the files in front of the white king. It's a race against time. 11. BXF6, a critical moment. Keres decides to resolve the tension on the kingside by trading his powerful bishop for the knight. His goal is to shatter black's pawn structure, weaken the dark squares around the king, and remove a key defender, hoping to accelerate his attack before black's counterplay becomes too strong. 11. NXF6, Fischer chooses to recapture with the knight instead of the pawn. This keeps his pawn structure intact for the moment and brings the knight to a more active square. The alternative, GXF6, would have opened the g-file for the rook but would have also created permanent weaknesses around his king. 12. E5. A powerful pawn sacrifice from Keres. He blasts open the center to create a direct attack on black's uncastled king. This move attacks the key BB7 bishop and threatens to rip open the e-file, creating a multitude of tactical possibilities. The position is now on fire, and precise calculation is paramount. 12. BB7, the only move, and a brilliant one. Fischer develops his Najdorf bishop to the long diagonal with a tempo on the white queen. This crucial intermediate move disrupts white's plan, forces the queen to move, and gives black a vital tempo to reorganize his forces in the face of the onslaught. 13. X6, Keres follows through with his plan, capturing the knight on F6. He is betting everything on his attack, hoping that the open lines and the weakness of the black king will be enough to decide the game in his favor, even at the cost of significant material or positional concessions. 13. BXF3, Fischer is forced to recapture. His king's position is looking increasingly precarious, but his pieces are becoming very active. The bishop on F3 is a powerful piece that controls key squares and will play a crucial role in the coming complications. The tactical battle intensifies. 14. BXF3, Keres recaptures and simultaneously unleashes an attack on the black rook on A8. It seems that white is winning material and consolidating his attack. On the surface, black's position looks desperate, as saving the rook would require a passive move, giving white a free hand to continue the assault. 14. BXF6, a stunning and brilliant move from Fischer. Instead of moving his rook, he simply ignores the threat and captures the white knight on d4. This is a profound positional sacrifice. Fischer correctly calculates that the resulting tactical complications and the long-term strength of his pieces will be more than enough compensation for the exchange. 15. BXA8, Keres accepts the challenge and captures the rook, winning the exchange. From a purely material standpoint, white is now winning. However, Fischer has foreseen that the board is about to be transformed, and the material balance will soon become irrelevant compared to the positional factors. 15. D5, this is the point of Fischer's combination. He creates a powerful pawn wedge in the center of the board. This pawn on d5 is a monster, it severely restricts the mobility of white's pieces, creates a fantastic outpost for his bishop, and acts as a shield for his king. The strategic balance has shifted dramatically in black's favor. 16. Bx d5, Keres, realizing the danger, tries to eliminate the problematic d5 pawn. He hopes to open up the position for his rooks and prove that his material advantage is decisive. However, this allows Fischer to continue his plan of activating his pieces and exposing the white king. 16. Bx d4, an excellent intermediate move. Before recapturing the bishop, Fischer trades off the knight on c3, which was a key defender of the e2 square in the white king's position. This seemingly small move has huge consequences, as it further weakens white's defensive coordination and prepares for black's final assault. 17. Rx d4, Keres is forced to recapture with the rook. His pieces are becoming increasingly uncoordinated, and his king is looking more and more vulnerable. The initiative has now completely passed to black, who is dictating the course of the game despite being down the exchange. 17. Ex d5, Fischer recaptures, and he now has a monster passed pawn on d5, supported by his powerful queen. This pawn is a constant threat and ties down white's pieces. In exchange for the rook, Fischer has a powerful bishop, a passed pawn, and a disorganized white army. The compensation is more than adequate. 18. Nx d5, the knight captures the pawn, but this only serves to bring black's queen into the game with tempo. Keres is trying to consolidate his position and eliminate black's threats, but Fischer's attack is just beginning to gain momentum. The position is still incredibly complex. 18. Qc5, the queen enters the fray with a double attack on the rook on d4 and the weak g2 pawn. The queen takes control of key squares and begins to create a web of threats around the exposed white king. White is now forced onto the defensive, a situation Keres is not used to. 19. 1 plus rupee, Keres brings his final piece into the game with check, hoping to create some counterplay and force black to respond to his threats. The rook on e1 is an active piece, but it also becomes a target for black's queen and rook, which are about to join the attack. 19. Kf8, Fischer's king finds a surprisingly safe square on f8. Away from the open files and diagonals, the king is much safer here than it would have been on the queen side. This move also prepares to bring the h8 rook into the game, a key idea in Fischer's attacking plan. 20. c3, a necessary defensive move. Keres is forced to spend a tempo shoring up his position and defending the d4 rook. This gives Fischer the time he needs to organize the final phase of his attack. White's pieces are passive, and he is struggling to find a constructive plan. 20. h5, a brilliant and profound concept from Fischer. He is preparing to bring his h8 rook into the game via the h6 square. This rook lift is a recurring theme in the Sicilian Najorf and is often a decisive attacking maneuver. The rook will swing over to the kingside and create unstoppable threats. 21. H5, Keres, seeing the impending danger, desperately tries to create his own attack by opening lines against the black king. He hopes to create enough confusion and threats to distract Fischer from his plan, but it is too little, too late. The initiative is firmly in black's hands. 21. Rh6, the rook lift is executed. The rook now controls the 6th rank, defends against any backrank threats, and is ready to swing into the attack on the g-file or f-file. This is the decisive moment of the game, as black's final piece joins the assault with devastating effect. 22. f6, Keres sacrifices a pawn in a desperate attempt to rip open the files in front of the black king. He hopes that this will create enough counterplay to save the game, but Fischer has calculated everything with unerring precision and is not intimidated by these last-ditch efforts. 22. Gxf6, Fischer calmly accepts the sacrifice, further exposing his king but trusting in his calculation and the strength of his attack. The open g-file will be used by his own rook, not white's. The material balance is restored, but the positional advantage for black is overwhelming. 23. Nf4, the knight jumps into the attack, hoping to create threats against the exposed black king. From f4, the knight eyes the g6 and h5 squares, but it is also vulnerable and will soon become a target for black's pieces. Keres is playing with fire. 23. h4, the h-pawn becomes a weapon. By pushing the pawn to h4, Fischer creates space for his king, restricts the white knight, and prepares to use the pawn as a battering ram in the final assault. Every move by Fischer is part of a coordinated and relentless attacking plan. 24, RD8+, a desperate check from Keres. He is trying to create some threats and force black to respond, but the black king is perfectly safe and will simply sidestep the attack. This is a sign that white is running out of constructive moves and is reduced to making hopeful, but ultimately futile, gestures. 24, KG7, the king calmly steps to G7, where it is completely safe from any further checks. The king is now perfectly placed to support the advance of the passed pawns and to participate in the final attack. The white attack has run out of steam, and the black counterattack is about to become decisive. 25, Re8, Keres creates a battery on the e-file, threatening a backrank mate. On the surface, this looks like a very dangerous threat, and a lesser player might have panicked. However, Fischer has foreseen this and has prepared a stunning counterattack that will end the game. 25, QG1+, the counterattack begins. Fischer ignores the threat of mate and starts a series of checks to drive the white king out into the open. This is the decisive combination that Fischer had been preparing for several moves. The white king, once a distant observer, is now the main target. 26, KD2, the king is forced to move out into the center of the board, or it will be exposed to the full force of black's attack. Every check from black's queen drives the white king further into a deadly mating net. Keres' position is collapsing with startling speed. 26, QF2+, another check. Fischer's queen is relentless, hounding the white king and creating new threats with every move. The queen is a monster, dominating the board and weaving a web of tactical possibilities that are impossible for white to defend against. The end is near. 27, N2, the knight is forced to block the check, but this is a fatal error. By moving the knight to e2, Keres blocks the defense of the g2 pawn and allows black's rook on h6 to join the attack with decisive effect. This is the final mistake in a difficult position. 27, RG6, the rook joins the party. The rook now attacks the weak g2 pawn, controls the open g-file, and prepares to deliver the final blow. The coordination between black's queen, rook, and king is perfect, while white's pieces are scattered and unable to cooperate in the defense. 28, G3, a desperate attempt to create a defensive shield for the king. Keres tries to block the g-file and prevent the black rook from penetrating, but it is a futile gesture. Black's attack is too powerful, and there are too many weaknesses in white's position to defend. 28, F5, the passed f-pawn, a remnant of the early middle game complications, now begins to march forward. This pawn is a dagger aimed at the heart of white's position, and it will soon deliver the coup de grace. The combination of the queen, rook, and passed pawns is completely overwhelming. 29, RG8+, another desperate check. Keres is trying to create some confusion, but Fischer's king is perfectly safe and will simply step out of the check and continue the attack. These are the last gasps of a dying position. The result of the game is no longer in doubt. 29, KF6, the king becomes an attacking piece. Instead of hiding, the black king bravely marches into the center of the board, where it supports the advance of the passed pawns and participates in the final mating attack. This is a testament to Fischer's confidence and his complete domination of the position. 30, RxG6+, Keres is forced to trade rooks to avoid immediate mate. This is a confession that his attack has failed and that he is now simply trying to survive. However, the resulting endgame is completely hopeless for white, as black's queen and passed pawns are too strong. 30, FxG6, Fischer recaptures, and his pawn structure is a mess, but it is completely irrelevant. His pieces are incredibly active, he has multiple passed pawns, and the white king is still hopelessly exposed. The transition to the endgame has only served to simplify black's path to victory. 31, GXH4, Keres captures a pawn, but it is a meaningless gesture. The material balance is irrelevant, as the strategic and tactical factors all favor black. The white position is in ruins, and the black pieces are poised to deliver the final blow. The game is effectively over. 31, QXH2, Fischer's queen becomes a monster, gobbling up white's weak pawns and creating new threats with every move. The queen is now completely unopposed and can wreak havoc on white's position. The white pieces are helpless spectators to the destruction of their king's position. 32. RD4. The rook tries to create a blockade and prevent the black pawns from advancing, but it is a hopeless task. The rook is the only active piece for white, but it cannot defend against the multitude of threats that black has created. The position is completely lost. 32. QH1. The queen repositions, preparing to support the advance of the passed pawns and to create a final mating net around the white king. Fischer is playing with ruthless precision, giving Keres no chance to create any counterplay. The execution of the attack is flawless. 33. KC2. The king tries to flee to the queenside, hoping to find a safe haven. However, there are no safe squares for the white king on the entire board. The black queen will continue to hound the king until it is trapped and checkmated. The king's flight is futile. 33. K5. The black king continues its majestic march into the center of the board. From E5, the king dominates the position, supports the advance of the passed pawns, and cuts off the escape routes of the white king. The active king is the final nail in white's coffin. 34. F4. A last-ditch effort from Keres. He tries to create a passed pawn on the queenside, hoping to create a distraction and divert black's attention from the attack on the king. However, Fischer is not distracted and will simply ignore this threat and continue with his main plan. 34. QF1. The queen continues to harass white's pieces, tying them down to passive defense and preventing them from organizing any resistance. The queen attacks the knight on C1 and prepares to create new threats against the white king. The pressure is relentless. 35. NC1. The knight is forced into a passive defensive role, where it is completely useless. The white pieces are paralyzed and can only watch as black prepares to deliver the final blow. The coordination of black's pieces is a stark contrast to the disarray of white's army. 35. QG2+, another check. Fischer continues to drive the white king further into the corner, where it will be trapped and mated. Every move is played with a clear purpose, and the final combination is now clearly in sight. The beauty of Fischer's play is its ruthless efficiency. 36. KB3. The king is driven further away from the center and closer to the edge of the board. The king's position is now completely hopeless, and it is only a matter of a few moves before it is checkmated. Keres is playing on only out of respect for his opponent and the beauty of the position. 36. Bxa4+. Fischer liquidates the queenside, removing any potential counterplay that white might have had. By exchanging the pawns, he simplifies the position and clarifies his path to victory. The final phase of the game will be a simple execution of the mating attack. 37. K3. The king is now on the edge of the board, a terrible square for a king in the endgame. It is completely cut off from the rest of the board and is a helpless target for black's queen. The king's journey from the center to the edge of the board has been a fatal one. 37. QC2. The queen attacks the knight on D3, forcing it to move and creating new weaknesses in white's position. The queen is a tireless attacker, constantly probing for weak points and creating new threats. The white position is collapsing from all sides. 38. ND3+. The knight is forced to move to D3, where it blocks the king's escape routes and becomes a target for black's queen. This is the final mistake in a lost position. The knight move only serves to accelerate the end of the game. 38. KF6. The king finds a safe and useful square on F6, from where it supports the advance of the passed pawns and prepares to participate in the final mating attack. The king has played a crucial role throughout the entire game, and it is fitting that it should be a key piece in the final combination. 39. NC5. The knight tries to create a blockade and prevent the black pawns from advancing, but it is a hopeless task. The knight is the only piece that is trying to defend, but it cannot hold back the tide of black's attack. The position is completely lost. 39. QC1. The queen is everywhere, attacking, defending, and creating threats all over the board. From C1, the queen eyes the weak pawns on the queenside and prepares to deliver the final blow to the white king. The queen has been the star of the show for black. 40. RX4. The rook captures a pawn, but it is a completely meaningless capture. The material balance is irrelevant, as the game will be decided by the attack on the white king. This is a sign of desperation from Keres, who is simply playing on inertia. 40, QE3, the queen attacks the knight on c5 again, forcing it to move and creating new weaknesses in white's position. The queen is relentless, giving white's pieces no rest and constantly creating new problems for them to solve. The pressure is unbearable. 41, next a6, the knight captures the a-pawn, but it is now completely trapped out of the game on the edge of the board. The knight will be a helpless spectator to the checkmate of its king. This is the final nail in white's coffin. The game is over. 41, f4, the f-pawn, the hero of the game, begins its final and unstoppable march to the queening square. This pawn has been a constant threat throughout the entire game, and it is fitting that it should deliver the final blow. The advance of the pawn is decisive. 42, rd4, the rook tries to create a blockade and stop the pawn, but it is a futile gesture. The rook is the only piece that is trying to defend, but it cannot hold back the tide of black's attack. The position is completely lost, and Keres is simply delaying the inevitable. 42, kf5, the king moves to f5, a perfect square from where it supports the advance of the passed pawn and prepares to participate in the final mating attack. The king has played a crucial role throughout the entire game, and it is fitting that it should be a key piece in the final combination. 43, nb4, the knight tries to get back into the game, but it is far too slow. The knight is a helpless spectator to the checkmate of its king. The white pieces are completely uncoordinated and unable to put up any resistance. The end is near. 43, QE7, a quiet and deadly move. The queen prepares to support the advance of the passed pawn and to create a final mating net around the white king. Fischer is playing with ruthless precision, giving Keres no chance to create any counterplay. The execution of the attack is flawless. 44, kb3, the king tries to flee, but there are no safe squares. The king is trapped in a deadly mating net, and it is only a matter of a few moves before it is checkmated. The king's flight is futile, and the end is near. The game is over. 44, qxh4, the queen captures another pawn, further devastating white's position and creating new threats. The queen is a monster, gobbling up pawns and weaving a web of tactical possibilities that are impossible for white to defend against. The pressure is relentless. 45, nd3, the knight tries to get back into the game, but it is far too slow. The knight is a helpless spectator to the checkmate of its king. The white pieces are completely uncoordinated and unable to put up any resistance. The end is near. The game is over. 45, g5, the g-pawn begins to march forward, creating another passed pawn and adding to white's misery. The black pawns are rolling down the board like a tidal wave, and there is nothing that white can do to stop them. The position is completely hopeless. 46, c4, a desperate attempt to create some counterplay. Keres tries to create a passed pawn on the queenside, but it is far too slow. The game will be decided by the attack on the white king, and this pawn is completely irrelevant. 46, qg3, the queen returns to the kingside, preparing to deliver the final blow. The queen has been the star of the show for black, and it is fitting that it should be the piece that delivers the checkmate. The final combination is now clearly in sight. 47, c5, the pawn advances, but it is a futile gesture. The game will be over in a few moves, and this pawn will never have a chance to queen. Keres is simply playing on inertia, waiting for Fischer to deliver the final blow. 47, f3, the f-pawn continues its unstoppable march. This pawn is the symbol of black's victory, and it is fitting that it should be the piece that decides the game. The advance of the pawn is decisive, and there is nothing that white can do to stop it. 48, kc4, the king tries to flee, but there are no safe squares. The king is trapped in a deadly mating net, and it is only a matter of a few moves before it is checkmated. The king's flight is futile, and the end is near. The game is over. 48, ef2, the pawn reaches the second rank and is now unstoppable. It will queen on the next move, and the game will be over. The pawn has been the hero of the game, and it is fitting that it should deliver the final blow. The position is completely hopeless. 49, nxf2, Keres is forced to sacrifice his knight for the pawn, but it is a futile gesture. The game is completely lost, and this is simply the last gasp of a dying position. The material balance is now completely irrelevant. 49, QXF2, Fischer recaptures, and his queen is now completely unopposed. The queen will now deliver the final checkmate, and the game will be over. The execution of the attack has been flawless, and the result is a testament to Fischer's genius. 50, C6, the pawn advances, but it is a futile gesture. The game will be over in a few moves, and this pawn will never have a chance to queen. Keres is simply playing on inertia, waiting for Fischer to deliver the final blow. The game is over. 50, QXB2, the queen captures another pawn, further devastating white's position and creating new threats. The queen is a monster, gobbling up pawns and weaving a web of tactical possibilities that are impossible for white to defend against. The pressure is relentless. 51, KC5, the king tries to flee, but there are no safe squares. The king is trapped in a deadly mating net, and it is only a matter of a few moves before it is checkmated. The king's flight is futile, and the end is near. The game is over. 51, QC3+, another check. Fischer continues to drive the white king further into the corner, where it will be trapped and mated. Every move is played with a clear purpose, and the final combination is now clearly in sight. The beauty of Fischer's play is its ruthless efficiency. 52, KD5, the king is driven further into the mating net. The king's position is now completely hopeless, and it is only a matter of one move before it is checkmated. Keres has been completely outplayed, and the result is a testament to Fischer's genius. 52, G4, a final, beautiful touch. Instead of delivering an immediate mate, Fischer pushes his g-pawn, creating a wall that will trap the white king and allow for a more elegant checkmate. This is a sign of Fischer's artistic appreciation for the game. 53, RC4, a final, desperate move. Keres tries to block the check, but it is a futile gesture. The game is over, and this move only serves to delay the inevitable. The position is completely hopeless, and the end is near. 53, QE5 #checkmate. The queen delivers the final blow, ending one of the most brilliant and complex games of Fischer's career. The coordination of black's pieces, the power of his passed pawns, and the activity of his king were all decisive factors in this stunning victory. 0-1.